they've dismissed it themselves in respect of 80 people at an Oireachtas skull voting last week, brazenly flouting the same guidelines that they want us all to adhere to. So the government itself is well aware that the guidelines are rubbish. Well, I'm a microbiologist. Before I studied medicine at the College of Surgeons, and I'm a general practitioner at the minute.
And what do you think of the government's policy to make masks mandatory?
Well, the government's policy has been effectively dismissed by the government itself in two ways. The COVID-19 committee in the Oireachtas, in the Dáil, commissioned an independent expert from the UK, from Oxford University, who has pointed out to the government, their department has pointed out clearly that masks are a total waste of time and dangerous in terms of cloth masks. So that information was already presented to the COVID committee, but they called Minister Donnelly to appear before them, but he dismissed them and wouldn't bother going. Well, it's a very important smokescreen for the manslaughter and the neglect that led to so many deaths in the nursing homes. Micheál Martin, one of his first acts of when he became Taoiseach, was to state quite clearly to the Irish people, with Ryan Tubridy on the Late Late Show, that there will be no public inquiry. So, this process of masks and herding us down this road is essentially a very sophisticated smokescreen to keep people talking about things like masks, which is what we're doing, and not talking about the horrible neglect and the failures and the people who have missed cancer screenings, breast cancer, cervical cancer screening. In order to keep us looking at those things and keep us away from a public inquiry or away from a look back, we'll have to look forward and have a dialogue about masks, which is fundamentally ludicrous.
If it makes you feel safe, that's absolutely fine. Everybody respects that. But it should not be a mandate. And indeed, Health Freedom Ireland stand for freedom of choice on this issue. Why should healthy people be by law mandated to wear a mask when there is not one shred of evidence to substantiate the fact that healthy people and people who are asymptomatic, which means people who have no symptoms, spread any COVID-19 virus? Why is our government ignoring the real science here? It's because the rules are being driven by politics, not real science. In 2017, the World Health Organization declared tuberculosis as a pandemic. That's right, a pandemic where almost 1.5 million people died. Now, tuberculosis is really, really infectious. So why were we not wearing masks then? Why was there no lockdown? The real question to be asked here is, what is the agenda this time round? What's happening here is a gradual erosion of our civil liberties. And I will conclude by saying that the reality is that the wearing of masks has little to do with protecting your health or someone else's. It has everything to do with testing how compliant you are.
So when we do engage in the dialogue about masks, and when we ask ourselves whether it's right or whether it's wrong or whether it makes sense, it doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense to have to spend €9 in order to enjoy a pint. What's going on here is absolutely laughable, and it has no scientific or medical basis whatsoever. And I'm not saying that as a doctor. Forget about what I have to say. In Dáil, Ireland, there is a COVID-19 committee. established by the Irish government to look into what's been done wrong and what's been done right. And the COVID-19 committee commissioned an independent expert from the Oxford University in London who has told them, and this is available on the government.ie website, on Oireachtas television, their own independent experts have told them that masks are a total waste of time. The government's own independent expert has told them that cloth masks that people are wearing around their face are not just a waste of time, but they're dangerous. They're filthy, they're dirty, and they're dangerous. Please don't accuse me or say to me that I'm speaking out against the government, because that's the government's own independent advice. So when we talk about guidelines, and when we talk about the flouting of guidelines, and when we talk about the care of the elderly people, we need to be angry, but we have to be careful, because anger is dangerous. And when we're angry and when we're talking about masks, we're doing what they want us to do. We're distracted. We're distracted from the people who have died, and we're distracted from the futures of our children. We need to use our democracy. We need to call Micheál Martin to task. He needs to reconvene the Dáil and not dismiss the notion that this is insignificant, or this is something that the government doesn't have to face up to. The government is going to have to face up to things. They're going to have to face up to all of us. And eventually, if we stay strong and if we stay fearless, the government will have to face up to the truth. Remember, we have nothing to fear except fear itself. Thank you.
So COVID-19 has the same death rate as a normal influenza. Even with all the overinflation of testing, still the death rate up to about June 2020, because people don't die of flu in the summer, is the exact same as an ordinary influenza virus. Coronaviruses only circulate between December and March. They are not, March and April, they are not causing death now. And why this is important is, if coronavirus is not circulating, if no one is dying, if cases are just people who had any coronavirus or the common cold, the government should stop testing, the media need to stop reporting on cases, and every aspect of the lockdown has to be stopped. So no lockdown, no masks, no social distancing, no infringements of our rights, no forced vaccinations, and most of all, children should not be interfered with in the schools. It is psychologically damaging for children to be made afraid of viruses and invisible bacteria. It is psychologically damaging. The doctors know it, the teachers know it, the civil servants know it, and it is actually going to cause depression and anxiety to a generation. So what they're doing is making the elderly have more illness and symptoms and more death and more fear. It's entirely preventable. To the children, they are instilling fear, forcing social distancing. Masks are entirely unnecessary. They are going to undermine their mental health for a generation, cause them unnecessary anxiety. It is totally a crime against the children and a crime against humanity, a crime against the elderly. No, truth and freedom. No, we're not having it. That in Irish law, whether you're a scientist or a GP or a minister for health or a civil servant or an administrator in your local hospital or someone who owns or manages a care home, or the care home workers teachers or the nurses or the bus drivers or the police or anyone, while they all do great work, they have no legal right to infringe our human rights, our rights under the Constitution, and enforce masks or vaccinations. There is no need to vaccinate children against the flu, against all flu. So this is one of the reasons why we're here, and I would ask you to support as membership Health Freedom Ireland and Tracy O'Mahony. And you as parents, you have to stand up now. Parents in Ireland, talk to all the parents in your class. Parents, you have the responsibility to look after the welfare and well-being of your children. Do not rely on the state. Do not rely on what you're being told by RTE. I would totally say you take back your parental and guardian responsibility, and this vaccine is not necessary. Say no! So this is Modena, okay? The vaccine candidate, the results from a phase 1. So it caused 80% of phase 1 participants had side effects ranging from fatigue, 80%, 80%, chills, 80%, headache, 80%, muscle pain, 53%. And after the second dose, 100% of all participants experienced side effects. Do you want that? Do you want that vaccine? No! Say no! And of all of the groups in the second dose, they had either one or more significant side effect. So I would say there is no problem. We don't need a vaccine for a solution, but it could come up very quickly in emergency legislation. So each of you have to write a letter again and notice of liability to the school, to your teachers, to your principals, to the governing board, and say, I am not giving permission for my 4-year-old to 12-year-old to get this vaccine. We don't want it. Say no. Truth and